Yeah, ayirigamwe.
That are meant to avoid repetition of some other words. Repeating. So instead of repeating, we use cohesive differences. Right. So we did something on did we do? We did something on what? I believe there are some other terms that we went through last time. Like we explored the types of cohesive devices, where we talked about grammatical and lexical. So I think we talked more on the grammatical devices, right? Or cohesion, right? We talked more on this. But we did talk more on this. And usually, when we talked about the grammatic cohesion, we said that we talked about those items or those devices that usually we provide that connection with other parts of speech, but usually they are grammatical in nature, right? Which means if you know the rules of grammar, you could know that this belongs to such part. Like we gave an example, we did some examples of grammatical cohesion. We said that we have got examples like reference, right? We talked about reference, we talked about ellipsis, reference, okay. And we also talked about substitution. This one is a substitution, but still we can put it separate, right? And conjunction, right? Right, so we talked about this. And on the references, I don't know if you had time to go through the slides, although I will share another slide because today I wanted to go through a second part, which is the lexical cohesion part more, and I wanted us to go further. But if it would have been quicker, had it been there was a PowerPoint presentation, would have been easier. I would have been cruising, but I don't know if we're going to finish that side. But now, on the references here, we talked about examples like what is called proforms. If you check on the slide, on the I know this one I didn't say much. I wanted to talk about what are called determinants, but what else here? But proforms are one of the easiest to know. Then you have got conjunction, which are obvious. But now, what we talked about here, we like say that we have those devices that will refer to something, right? We have items of English languages that will be, instead of using the same word, right, you are going to use it to refer to something else. Whereby if somebody is going to read that particular write-up, we will know what you mean, right? So if you have got such kind of device, because the reference is a normal, ordinary grammatical way in terms of grammar, it's something that is grammatical, right? So in the reference, that's why we have now those proforms. Proforms are like those words whereby are going, usually they're going to stand in for nouns, right? There's a noun, then you're going to have a certain word that is going to be in the place of noun, right? So it's doing the same way, because when you read it, we will read the whole write-up. You are going to link. You're going to know that, okay, this word, it means this. But how are you going to connect the reference between, for example, if you have got him, right? If you have got him, you know that him is referring to something, because there's a reference. That's why it's falling under references, right? It is referring to somebody. So for you to know that, okay, him is referring to who, you see on the other part of the if it's maybe there could be two sentences, maybe a sentence or a phrase and full stop, another one, but usually it's going to be on the other part, whereby the him is going to be there, right? So you're going to refer to that particular side for you to know what it is all about, which means if maybe if it was not there, it would have been somehow a problem, right? Because imagine if you talk about somebody, then maybe there's a full stop, or maybe there's another part. You want to talk about the same person, and then you don't mention the person. It can work, but it can also not work. But there's a scenario whereby you can do that, because when you say that there's the name of the person, then you don't want to repeat the name of the person. You want to use a reference. Then if you are using like a pronoun, right, then it means you are using proforms, right? Then if you don't want to mention the name, because there are scenarios whereby you can have a sentence whereby they are talking about something, and then they are still talking about the same thing on another aspect, but they don't repeat the name of the subject, right? And they don't even mention it. But when you read, you know what they are talking about. So if they completely eliminate the name, or I mean, without the repetition, there's a scenario whereby you don't repeat it, but the reader will going to refer to the name. If that's going to be the case, it's at this level now, ellipsis. As I said that normally, when you talk about ellipsis in some normal writing, you be seeing those dots, say elliptical dots. If there is a narrative, you have seen them before. Somebody was speaking, or maybe there was a narrative about something, then you see these three dots, do, then the writing continues. When there is a word here and there are three dots and another word, what it means that there are words that have been omitted in between, right? Which means they have used this ellipsis. You have ignored something, but you know that when you omit them, whoever is going to be reading should be able to understand or to connect the points to say, okay, still this other part of the sentence, they are talking about the same subject, right? Because if you are going to apply this, and then when somebody reads the sentence or maybe the narrative and he is confused, right, doesn't know who is who, it means this is not the proper use of that. What it means, we have got all these devices at your disposal. You have to make a decision, right? According to this write-up, the one that is going to be perfect is going to be this. So you might use the reference, which is like proform, which is a pronoun, to avoid repetition. You might decide completely to omit it. To say, okay, because if you are omitting it, what it means is, at the first part of the narrative, you mention it, right? It's like any other write-up. you can't omit something that you didn't mention it. It means at the beginning, you're going to mention it. John. Then as you are going on, then you are going to be talking about John without mentioning John, right? If you are going to talk about the same John by putting he or him, it means you are using proforms. If you are going to mention about him without repeating the name, without repeating putting the pronoun, it means you are using this. If you are going to substitute now the subject with something else, right? That still a person, I mean, whoever's reading is going to understand, because that's another way that we talked about. Let's see, we talk about substitution, but all these are under reference and they're under grammatical cohesion, right? So we talked about, let us see him. On the proforms, we gave examples, or some of the examples that we went through them. What else? I want to see the substitution, right? So substitution, we say that this is the replacement of the item by another, and ellipsis is the omission, as I've already said, the omission of the item, right? So if you're going to replace it by another item, it means you have used the substitution. And let's see, we talked about, let's see if we can have a good example here. We have a good example. Okay. Right. For example, if we say we have got a situation whereby we are using, let me say, especially when it comes to the actual situation, right? Then we are talking about a hurricane, right? There was a devastating hurricane, right? So you don't want to you are still continuing about the hurricane. You want to talk about how devastating it has been. So you don't want to repeat to say this devastating hurricane has done this, right? Then or somebody has done, or let me say, I want to try to put it to give a very straightforward example. Or somebody has done, has done or performed a certain action, right? So say, okay, this person has done this, and I also do so, right? You are using a word like, like so, right? This one has done this action, particular action, but I also do so. So this so, it is representing, it is a replacement, right? You are replacing the whole scenario that has happened with so. So if this is the way, because so is not a pronoun, right? You didn't use a proform there, and it is not ellipsis whereby you omit it, right? But you use one of the device that will just cause the one who is reading to refer to say, okay, this is so, you are meaning the action, right? So that's what we talked about under this substitution, whereby you substitute with a certain device instead of repeating, because this is a classical form of avoiding repetition, and usually this one it could help you because you could avoid repeating the whole phrase, right? Instead of repeating the whole phrase, you could just use one device to replace that, right? So conjunction is an obvious one, whereby you are having two parts, and then you are trying to make sure that you are joining the two. Like here to talk about, say, okay, we have an example here, right? I mean, you might have two parts, as we already talked about, two parts of clause or two clauses in a sentence. Now you are trying to make sure that these two clauses are linked in a way or connected in a way. So you talk about one thing, or they could even be two contrasting situations, right? Then you say, okay, maybe this person has done this particular maybe thing. However, I will do whatever. So when you say however, the however is now acting as a connector there. It's connecting this part and that part, right? Which is more or less like you are doing that. The other obvious one, you're talking about the and also to furthermore additionally, and in this one, if you talk about the conjunction, I don't know if I included in this one, but I'll share the new one because I was updating it. The slide. You have got like here, the say conjunction acts as a semantic cohesive or tie within text, and there are 4 categories of this conjunction, right? I didn't talk. I remember just saying in passing because we didn't have time. Yeah, but you check. You have 4 categories. Like there's the one that is called here additive conjunction. There's what is called adversive conjunction, and then there's causal conjunction and then temporal conjunction, right? I don't want to go into much details with this, but on the additive conjunction is maybe the one that is much more straightforward that we usually use, like and also to and this one, I think that the best way, as I said, that I said that you just go and refer to the slides. I didn't want to spend much more time on this because I wanted us to go on the lexical cohesion, but it's just straightforward. When you check on the slide, you see these examples, the 4 types, and there are examples in them. But the bottom line is, we just have to know that, just have to know what the conjunctions are. If you know conjunctions, right, it's easier for you to know that, okay, I will connect this with a conjunction. So if you are going to connect with the conjunction, you do that. I think this one, maybe you might be wondering that why are we learning this? Because somehow you're going to be like we're learning Greek. No. What you're talking about is you might find a job somewhere as maybe a sub-editor, right? So all these elements or items are the same in English elsewhere. Doesn't matter which program you are doing. As long as grammar is concerned, English, they are the same. If you want to, for example, to write you have got a comprehension, so you want to make it concise, right? You don't want to have a conjunction where a comprehension that is maybe 900 words, but it is full of repetitions, it's full of unnecessary phrasing. You can have a 400 word comprehension if you follow something like that, but it can be straight to the point, right? And it can be much more professional, because what you do, like in a professional writing, you avoid the obviously grammatical problems, issues to do with repetitions is one of them, right? Unnecessary repetitions, they say some other superfluous words. There are some other items whereby if you read, you say, okay, you could remove this part, it could still make sense, right? So if you're writing a comprehension, now you have removed a certain part, but these people are still getting the point. So what was the reason for adding that part? So it's where you think about the ellipsis. For example, it's okay if I remove, because that's how you can test it. There are some other comprehension whereby if you remove that word, people are not going to get a meaning, right? But once if you know that if I can remove this part, the meaning will not change. It means that is a necessary part, right? So you see, for you, like it's better to professionally now know. Don't like do guesswork. You should exactly know what you are doing. It's okay. What I'm doing here, I'm trying to maintain the meaning of this sentence, right? So I don't want to be repeating the words. I want to use another word, but people should still get the meaning. Or I want to just omit the word, but people should still get the meaning. Or I want to substitute. So these are the techniques or the ways whereby it can help you to have that good comprehension, right? in English. I mean, if you know, so about, and this is most some of them, I mean, most they don't follow some such, then you have a problem whereby they have to do deep editing, right, to be removing some of the things, right? So, okay, I was just going back on this because this one, that's what we were doing last time. So then this one we did talk about on the lexical, because this on the lexical cohesion. What we say is like this, there are two types of cohesion, but now we say this one is grammatical, which means you can see all the elements we have been doing there, they are the same grammatical elements that you know. But in here, this is the opposite, right? It's not grammatical. So what it means is like, in here, it's just by observing the rules of grammar, if it's the way it is. While in here, it's more to do with the meanings, right? The meanings of specific words, and unlike looking at the grammar part of it, right? So here say on the lexical cohesion, this is a way of achieving a cohesive effect by the use of particular vocabulary items, right? So in this one,
you go by what
you might have elements whereby there's a lot of like we say, if you can check one of the common elements that we have seen on the grammatical, if you can be observant, you notice that is the reference part, right? On the grammatical, there's a lot of element of reference, right? You put something that is going to be referring to something like that, right? While on the lexical, you'll be having element of maybe some of the elements that you avoided in this part, they might be used here, like repetitions, right?
What is your name?
You might have repetitions here, but they're going to be a certain way of repetitions, right? The way you would repeat some other words. So you might have, and these repetitions, could be, I mean, there's some kind of those repetitions, and there are some other elements. It's not like just the substitutions, right? But you are going to be using some other items that may be closer to substitution, right? We have got here, if you check the slides, we have items like devices like synonyms, or what are called hyponyms, and then we have what is called the collocation, right?
And then
so when it comes to collocation, we're going to talk about it. Collocation is just like now the way whereby you take a certain word and you add it with another word to produce a certain meaning, right? So it's all about the meaning. To say, okay, instead of
find out
like
analysis for each one of you,
maybe a very
now,
for example,
for us to move towards our objective this morning, to know what you have and to know what you don't have.
Like maybe that's
to gather out a survey,
boiling tea,
and that survey will reveal exactly what you have.
Or you can have a sentence, it can be a phrase, and then you can have one word, which is like the word is
what
like,
you have and what you don't have.
Mental illness
is what we call
the mental is something different, right? But so, if you think about illness, it's something.
You are students.
So you want to talk about the problem that is to do with the mental. So instead of having a sentence to talk about,
then 5 things
you combine mental and the illness, you form mental illness. It brings a certain meaning completely, right? So that kind of meaning,
look at your own
creation
life.
By using that approach.
Now
it's what you have here. It's now that will be dealing with the collocation.
So about 5 minutes
and I know, I mean, when you first grasp and you go through this, it appears to be complicated, right? But when you sit down and observe whatever has been said, you see that it's making sense, right? You would even get it, and then you can even use it easily, right? Under this, you have
right now
repetition. And I think we're going to be say there's some other elements that are closer to repetitions, but are not. We'll be talking about them. Like I think let me not indicate A here, but let me just write like repetition. Then you have synonyms. You have what is called hyponyms. You have collocation. I think collocation could become at the end, but we've got some other names. There are a lot of number. These names, these names.
What is it that you have?
What else do we have in here? Okay, you have okay, Mero name. The good thing of some of these name, they could give you a clue what they are. For example, when you're talking about this Mero name, you also hear about the Horo name. You're also going to hear about this one is Kome Ronem. I know these that they are sounding like threatening names, but they are not. If you're going to get what they do, then you have collocation, right? Collocation we could put it at the end, right? So you have got devices like these that are used on the lexical cohesion side, right? It's going to be performing the same job, but they are going to be not strictly on the grammatical side, right? They are more on the other side, which is the lexical side, right? So in this one, let's just think about like on the repetition. Repetition involves the reiteration of a lexical item, and it is in its simply expressed form. It's like the reiteration, meaning when you are saying lexical item, we're talking about like that item that you're going to use, which is not grammatical, but you're going to use it to link the other with the other part, right? But now, how you're going to use it when you are on this section? You are going to use it by reiterating, meaning like mentioning it again, right? But the way you're going to make is you're going to be following the, I mean, the way the words are placed together, because it's all about the way the arrangement of the words, right? The way they are put together, the words, they should not appear awkward. And usually, on the repetition, you usually have maybe a one word, right? Because if you are going to have like a phrase and you use this repetition, it will be now a problem. It's better when you are going to be now concerned about maybe finding a replacement. But usually, you have heard some other maybe phrases or sentences whereby there is a person that has been mentioned, then that person is also being mentioned in another way. For example, here say an example, say the child ate ready apple, right? The apple was ripe, right? Or this apple was ripe. So what's happening there is like there was no repetition. There's just the apple has been mentioned like for the second time, but it's just been mentioned in a certain way that it doesn't sound awkward, right? So if it's going to be in that way, right? So, but when you have on the repetition, it's not like one type of repetition, right? Because the main aim of repetition, that's why we have these other, ways in terms of the grammatical cohesion, whereby they try as much to avoid repetition, because most of the times in writing, repetition will make a write-ups appear awkward, or will make it appear having maybe unnecessary words, right? Wording. So the repetition that is being done in the lexical cohesion, usually they are of different types. They're on different levels. Like if I share the slide, you're going to see there's a table whereby you have something like 7 types of repetitions, right? You have got a simple repetition, you have got the complex repetition, you have got the equivalent repetition, the generalization repetition, the specialization repetition, or specialization repetition, the contrast. So what is happening? The repetition, what is going to be done in this part, will not be like when you repeat it the way I've talked about, one word you just will repeat the same word. That is a simple repetition. You didn't do anything, right? But if you repeat it by not taking the same word, but using it like I think we could give an example like here. If you say in a simple, say a student in your class, right? Let me see this one. Okay. Okay. A student in your class, to grade the students, or maybe the student in a class is, and then you wanted to grade that student. So it's the same. It's a student, right? Which is just straightforward. If you think coming on the complex, it says okay. Instead of just coming straight, say to grade a student, the grade that you gave, right, and you continue. Let's say that unfortunately here there was a specific only specific part, but in here it's like you don't want it to appear
in a group setting
to write it in a certain similar way, the way you wrote it in the first class, right? You are trying to phrase it in a little bit different way, right?
Students have,
or there could be a repetition whereby you are not using the word, or that the actual word that you use, but you are using an equivalent word to that particular item or subject you are talking about. Like if you say, here talk about the example they gave is about like aquatic plants, right? You're talking about aquatic plants. If you know that aquatic plants, it means they are the plants or water plants, right? So you could repeat, more or less like repeat by mentioning water plants instead of aquatic plants, right? There was a problem with these aquatic plants.
Don't look
these
at
water
each
plants.
other, discuss.
So you are talking about the same aquatic plant, but
when
now
discuss,
you have chosen an equivalent, right? So that's why I say that when you check the table, you discover that they are in terms of the types of repetition, right?
This is
you're going to be there's going to be a simple repetition, which is straightforward. You're going to have a complex, which is a little bit you're trying to change some other ways. You are going to arrange the sentence. Then there's equivalence.
So you are money makers.
So equivalence repetition is the one I was talking about here. Whereby you have mentioned something, then you want to talk about the same thing, so you're just looking at the equivalent of that. If you see, for example, you are talking about let me say
those that are needed,
goats, right? Then you're saying, okay, these animals, I mean, is this animal or something like that? You are trying to find something that is an equivalent. Or you might have a repetition which is like only what is called generalization, right? Whereby you talk about, let me say, rose flower, right? Then you are saying that later on you're talking about these, I don't know which group does, or let me say plants, because it's a plant, right? Then you're talking about the next, you're talking about plants, or this plant. it's because a plant is like it's a general name, right? Plant, if you ask yourself that what do you have in plants? There are so many types of varieties of plants, right? But what you are talking about in the beginning, it was a specific item. Then later on, you are referring to a general term. So what you have done there is you are repeating, but you didn't just take the same name. You are using a repetition, which is like on a generalization type. You are generalizing it, right? Then there's a specification, like here. Let me see if you can have an example here. But like you talk about here on the generalization, North American English, right? North American English is part of the languages, right? So if you talk about at the beginning North American English, then later on you're talking about the language, this language or languages, right? It means you are coming from the an item then to a general term. So that's also another part of repetition under this, right? Then you have like a specification repetition, which is a repetition, right? Whereby it means it's like it's an opposite. Only specification repetition is like it's like the opposite of generalization, right? Only generalization, you started with one thing, then you are repeating it by a whole term. Only specificalization, it means you start with something which is like only whole, then you are repeating it by using a specific name. For example, if you have an example like organism, right? Organism, maybe it's a living organism. Then later on, you are repeating, talking about
this
the same by using
the students
plants,
are discussing,
right?
but let
so
me
if you are using plant, it
so
means
that you can also be
living or an organisms are. It's like it was a general term. Then if you are saying plant, you are only specific. You are going specific, right? So that is a specification repetition, right? So it's a repetition that you can use, because I'm saying that this one, if you are a sub-editor, these are the things that you become a professional writer by using element, like whereby you observe that no, I might not repeat this, I can repeat this, but by not mentioning it again to make it to do sound of you just use the same. You decide what you want. If you want to concentrate on plants, then you can use this type whereby you come from the whole to a specific. If you are concentrating on a specific, you could start from a small, then you repeat it with a specific. So it will just depend on what's your aim when you are, communicating. So there's what is called there's a specification, as I say, like one of the repetition. Then you can have what is called the co-specification, right? Like you are linking it up, right? There is like here, give an example. You have copper, then you have nickel, then you have lead or lead. They are the similar type of items, but you are connecting them, right? But I'm saying I know that some of you would say no, we're not getting it. Unfortunately, this I prepared this to have it on there's a table there, right? When I'm explaining this, you have been seeing the table here. You have been straightforward. So in the meantime, if you're not much getting, don't worry. You get the slide. What I'm saying, all these types, they are on one table. You see that this side there's 1, 2, 3 up to 7. So you'll be seeing against the examples. Although these examples might not be that clear, right? You might even search it on the internet just to have maybe clear examples. But the thing is, this you can even much more search on the more the examples of repetition, because it's all about repetition, right? So you get it. What I'm talking about, it's not that complicated. If you got the table, okay. Some of this, especially the course specification, seems to be complicated in the sense that if you know how writers or maybe poets, or if we can have these musicians, maybe if you have got, had it been, I don't know nowadays, but people who does music, like rap music, actual serious rap music, people who call themselves lyricists, right? They use poetry, right? It's all about poetry. If they know about poetry and you're writing it in a poetic format, what you do, you add everything, right? You add alliteration, you add it's called repetition, right? You can add alliteration. It's like you have what you call bars, right? Yourself, you say bars, you have good bars. Now you are going to have a rhyming whereby you are going to rhyme within a sentence, right? You can have this sentence rhyming with this, right? You can have a rhyming whereby this will rhyme with the third one, the second one will rhyme with the fourth one. Then you can have also rhyming whereby the sentence, words within a particular sentence will be rhyming inside it. So some of this, if you see, they're just like you are repeating the same thing. But if we say, for example, I'm just giving an example of that. If you have seen people who know how to write, if it's a poem or a rap song, a good ones, if they are ending with a similar rhyme at the end, usually somehow it's okay. Maybe rhyme is okay, but if they're using the same word, because in terms of the rhymes, we know that they have the same sound, but they are not. It's not the same word, right? But if you are having one word, maybe ending with lirongwe, this lirongwe, that lirongwe, it will sound shallow, right? You are using the same word. Why? But if you are using similar, different, you are talking about lirongwe, but now you change the words, right? In here you talk about lirongwe. The other one you talk about maybe dusty city. The other one you use another, but you're talking about the same thing. You are going to be. I mean, people are saying this guy is a very good writer, right? But the bottom line is you are trying to refer to talk about the same thing in a certain way, which is not going to be boring. That's what we're talking about. So on the repetition is almost the same, whereby you explore some ways of repeating something without make it sound awkward and boring. Okay, enough of repetition, right? Yeah, we're going to maybe to dwell much on it. But now you also have synonyms, right? Which can also be used in the same way or as a lexical cohesion device, right? So synonyms, I believe it's not a new word, right? What is a synonym? When you say a synonym, you know them. You have been hearing about synonyms, right? What is a synonym? Yeah, yes. The good thing of this is like it's starting with C, similar, right? Although there's a difference here, but you're talking about you're going to be using. I mean, you're going to use an item with which have the similar meaning, right? Because here, as I say on the lexical, is to do with meanings, right? So meaning you might change an item there, but that item should mean the same to the previous one, right? That you are referring, you're talking about. Because if it means something different, the meaning will change, right? And that's why I said that for us to make a distinction between grammatical cohesion and the lexical, just know that on the lexical, much like you concentrate much on the meanings of what you are using to say, okay, does this mean what you want? Is it meaning the other thing or not? Right. So all a synonym involves the use of lexical items which are, in some sense, semantically equivalent, right? Because as I said that on the lexical here, it deals with semantics, right? Semantics, maybe here could be more of the syntax, right? Because in semantics, you are dealing with the meanings, word meanings, right? On the syntax is usually the arrangement of the words, right? So in here, as I said that on the synonym, you use a lexical item which are in some sense semantically equivalent, right? Meaning the word you are going to use should be in some way, not like a directory, but if somebody really will know that, oh, you're talking about this, right? So if you're going to use such kind of word, that's what we're talking about. For example, here we have, for example, you might be talking about something that is bad, right? Something that is bad, you could say this is awful, right? When you say this is awful, you mean something that is bad, right? So on bad, you might use awful, you might use terrible, you might use horrible, but you're talking about something that is bad. So if you say something that was bad here, you don't have to mention it again. Okay, this is bad, maybe this is bad. No. You can use terrible, right? This is terrible. Then you want to repeat the same thing. This is horrible. You'll be changing those words. So like a synonym for bad, you have awful or synonyms, terrible, horrible, all those are the synonyms. Good, right? If something is good, and I think we know, we have got a lot of terms that we use even on social media, right? Some they even say dope. When they say dope, it means something that is good, right? And even last time, and if you say Malastaman's, now indeed the way their language, which will mean this is something that is good. If you go to another location, this is good, right? So those are synonyms, right? So good, you could say something that you could use fine, you could use excellent, you could use great, but you mean the same thing. If something is hot, right? Burning, fiery, or boiling is something that is called chire. You could use freezing, you could use frosty. If something that is simple or easy, something that is easy, what can you use? If you say this is an easy thing, what word can you use? What synonym can you use? Because we are dealing with synonyms here. What synonym can you use to mean easy without using the same word easy? Simple, right? What else? Easy. What else apart from simple? But it will mean the same thing. People will know. Effortless, right? When they say effortless, it means you don't have to struggle, right? If you don't have to struggle to do something, that is something that is simple, easy, something, right? So you could have, like here, you talk about, you could have simple, you could have even straightforward, right? And even some they use the same, which is like a repetition. They say this is straightforward and simple. Straightforward is the same as simple. When you just say straightforward is enough. When you say simple, you see, because those are the ways whereby you have to observe about the repetition. Because in English, we have got some other ways that people repeat without, they just say redundancies, right? So you need to eliminate redundancies. We know obviously repetitions like repeat again, as I said, is one of the most common. Because if somebody is repeating, it means that person is doing something for the second time. Right? So if you say repeat again, it means the person is doing it for the third time. It's not the second time. Because the repeat is doing it twice. So repeat again, it means you have repeated, then you are doing it again. That's how complex it is. So people think like, oh, when they say repeat again, you are talking about doing it twice, which is not. So those are some of the, repetition that we avoid. If you talk about something that is hard, what synonym can we use if something is hard? Something that is hard, difficult. What else? If something that is hard, what else can we use? If something that is hard is something that is difficult, tough, right? It's the same thing, right? What else? We have, let me see, okay. Challenging, right? Okay, so those ways. If it's something that is small, what word can you use? What synonym can you use to mean the same thing? Tiny, right? What else? Little, right? Mini. Some they say mini me. You're talking about, So I know even some they even say pocket size, right? Minute, right? So you could have all those, and you can even see that we have so many words that we can use, so that you don't have to say you are having a word. you should be repeating the same word throughout you have got comprehension. When that is awkward. It doesn't look professional, right? But if you can say you are talking about something, then you are using synonyms. You are a professional writer, right? Because you are not going, you are going to be talking about the same, but by not just repeating all over, right? So, right. So those are the good thing of synonym, right? Because what we're talking about is, you have said that you're talking about something that is hard, right? So you want to talk about the same thing because it's when you're talking about, maybe you are trying to link. How do we link a cohesive? How is it becoming a cohesive device? It is becoming a cohesive device because you mentioned it at the beginning, something else, something that is hard. Then you will talk about the same thing. So you don't want to repeat it, but you use another word, which is a synonym. But if somebody is going to read it, we will know that you mean this way. It means it is making a connection, right? So as long as it is making connection to something, that's how it's becoming a cohesive device. Because that's the whole idea, right? To say the devices that you are going to use to show connections between among items that you are in terms of when you are writing something or in a comprehension of something or sentences, right? Okay, so we have got so many of them that we can see on the synonyms. Okay, then we have got this. I think some other parts here we are not much familiar with them. We have got what are called the hyponyms, right? Or I think I missed something else. I think I missed this. I missed one thing here. You're supposed to have to start with what is called the antonym. Right? You're supposed to have to be antonym here. From after synonym, then you're supposed to have hyponym later on. Right? So on the antonym, in this one is whereby you have a cohesive semantic link whereby it's established between lexical items of opposing meanings, right? Because maybe you heard about anti-chakuti, right? When they say antidote, it means it's opposing the dot. So when you have antonym, it means it will have an opposing meaning, right? It's not like just completely synonym, but here you say it's more or less like you're having an opposing meaning of something, right? Because here we are all dealing with meanings, right? For example, which is some of these are just obvious, right? Like if you say something is bad, right? What is the opposite of bad? Good, right? If something is or if there is hot, cold, right? Near, far, tall, short, right? Quite, noisy, agree, disagree, complete, incomplete. So you have all those. So if you are having that, it means if you say what is an antonym of hot, it's cold. Right? You just have to check the opposite, right? What is the antonym of tall? It's short, right? So that's how antonyms work, right? So you might have scenarios whereby I mean how you use these. You use them. I mean, it will depend on the context, on what you are sending, the message you are sending, because you cannot have a standard to say you just have to use this. No. It will depend on, okay, according to the message you are sending. What message are you sending? Okay, so you have a scenario whereby you will need to use an antonym, right, to talk about something, right? So you have okay. All those approve, disprove, able, unable, interpret, misinterpret, inform, misinformed, inform, right? And all correct, incorrect, right? So you are going to have such kind of wordings. I know in the meantime, because I don't have even a space to demonstrate everything, but you will check some other example. I think it could even be more or less like your own self-assignment to just to go and check examples of like how you use the antonyms in a lexical cohesion, right? You're going to see examples how you can use this, but these are some of them you can use, right? The good thing, as I'm saying, if you see these examples, you see that all of them, they are basing on the meanings, right? Because when you say bad, you don't have to look at the sentence construction to know that the opposite of bad is this. You just have to say, okay, what does bad mean? Okay, if it's the antonym, you just take the opposite meaning of it, right? So that's what you see. Okay, then you have hyponyms, right? Then the hyponym or a hyponym is the semantic relationship of being subordinate or belonging to a lower rank or class, right? So the thing is, on the hyponym, what you are going to do is something has been mentioned, then you are going to mention maybe the same thing, but you are going to mention the lower class level of that thing, right? If it's a tree, you are not going to mention like or maybe, I don't know, example, let me say the best example here. If we, do you have a good example here? Okay, but let me just continue this. So say, we refer to hyponym when a cohesive relationship is established between a genus, which is the superordinate, which is such a general concept, and a specific concept, right? So this is an example that I talked about at that time, but you say you are talking about a tree, you're talking about trees, right? Then later on you talk about pine. So tree is a general term, a pine is a specific term, right? So you like go in from from the general, then you can go to specific. Let's see examples here. If you have here, for example, you have got pigeon, right? You have got the pigeon, you have got the crow, you have got eagle, seagull, right? So if you say pigeon, where do the pigeon belong? Or what genotype do you use? For example, if you talk about pigeon, you're talking about a crow. Tegeza kwangwala, ugamba pigeon, ugamba. Where do they belong? The ones we are talking about. Okay, the animal, but the birds, that's specific, right? The animal, but not to be specific, they are bird, right? So it means a crow is a hyponym of a bird. What it means in here, you hyponym, you are like you're mentioning something that is on the lower level of it. And if it's they say, okay, what is the hyponym for this particular thing? Then you look something that is belongs to that group that is on in the lower level. Kuto, if pali tegeza kuti ndarama, right? Ukapenda makwacha, then you think about one, maybe 5 kwacha. Okay, they are part of hyponyms of kwacha, right? But as you're saying, also animal is the same way. You also correct. Like you say, you have a bird. If you talk about a crow, it's a hyponym of a bird, right? But a bird is a hyponym of animal. Further, that's how you can arrange it. If a bird is one of the animals, the animal. While if you talk about claw, it's under my birds, right? So what you do on the hyponyms, you just have to check the lower level is this one. So that's my hyponym. So you have got scenarios where you are going to use this. Okay. I don't know what time because I don't want to go through. Okay, I've got a few minutes. We'll finish this. Meronym. This is R, M-E-R-O-N-Y-M, right? I mean, these are just new, it could be new terms that you can get to know them, right? Okay, meronym is a word that names a part of a larger whole, right? We are talking about a tree. So if you talk about leaves, that's a meronym, right? Because a leaf is part of a tree. So as I say, a meronym is a word that names a part of a larger whole. As here you say, we refer a meronym when a cohesive relationship is established between a concept and its parts, right? Because what matters is it will depend on